Hi, my name is Jared Tubb. I am a senior manager at Airbnb responsible for integrating businesses and acquisitions that Airbnb does.
Mr. Jared Tubb, please describe to us how you see your future.
I think that's a good question. For me, I don't think it's a good idea to have too rigid a plan about what you want to do with yourself. Allowing for opportunity to present itself is really important to me. So having a direction that you move towards is key, but allowing for some flexibility in the path that you take to get there is probably the single most important thing. 10 years from now, I'd say I'd like to work in an environment that allows me to challenge myself, to learn new things, but also appreciate my life overall.
What adventures have you embarked on personally and professionally?
I would say moving to the US was probably a big adventure for me. Originally from East London, I am very much a small town kind of guy. If you had asked me 10 years ago, actually my wife did ask me, girlfriend at the time, if I would ever visit the US, and my response without thinking was not even for a vacation. Today I live here. So I think moving to the US was a big milestone for me in my life. Professionally, it's provided more opportunities than I could have thought possible at the time. And personally, I think I am not the most extroverted individual. So coming to the US has meant that building a social network, a community, being away from family has always been really challenging. But it's something that I've learned to cope with in different ways, and I think I'm actually closer to my family now than I was before. So I think that was probably the biggest challenge for me in the last decade, I would say.
What is your single biggest challenge on a daily basis?
I think Airbnb in general, from a change perspective, is a challenging environment. I think it's one of the things I love most. I never come into my work day knowing exactly what I'm going to do in a day. It's very ambiguous, and the company itself changes on a regular basis. So I think operating in that space means that you have to be flexible, you have to draw on your experience across different parts of your life and sort of apply it to every situation. So that to me has probably been the single biggest challenge, but it's also the thing I've enjoyed most about my day-to-day work here.
What trends and disruptions do you see in your daily business world?
I kind of think of these as two. There are some positive and some negative. I think one of the most positive things today is that individuals more broadly across the world have access to information. I think it allows them to make more informed decisions. It allows people to have greater opportunity and just expands a global network. I think that's a huge benefit to us in general. I think the downside to that is that people spend more time in front of their laptops, they spend more time in front of their phones. And for me, one of the most valuable things is personal connections. And it's a shame when you see people and that diminishing in their lives.
Tell me about yourself and how you landed up at Airbnb.
So I'm originally from East London. I've been in the US for close to 8 years now. I qualified in East London while working at KPMG, which is where I finished my articles. I went to school in East London as well. I don't know if you guys know, but Rhodes campus, they used to have a satellite campus based in East London, and that's where I did my undergrad and postgrad. I took a job in the US about 8 years ago. It was originally a 4-month contract and ended up being what is today 8 years. Got married 3 years ago. I have a dog that I love passionately and a cat actually from South Africa as well. Started working for Airbnb about 5.5 years ago and have served in a couple different roles since being here.
Have you always wanted to become a CA?
So I will be completely honest. Originally when I started university, my goal was not to be a CA. I think I always had an interest in the technology environment or landscape. So I went into universities with a goal of doing management and information systems as my majors. About 2 years into my degree, I realized that those were not necessarily the best fits for me, and my interests aligned with economics and my brain probably more closely with accounting. I think I've always liked things fitting well. I'm fairly meticulous, and honestly, like the debit and credit thing just seemed to fit really well. I was lucky enough that in my second year, KPMG actually came to one of our career fairs, and after a series of interviews, I ended up getting a contract with them post my degree. I think for me, it was always the easiest fit, just from a personality perspective, but I knew that it would open up a lot of opportunities in the future, and I've really enjoyed having the designation, but also the experience that came with it.
So, do you enjoy working for such a major global disruptor?
Yeah. So Airbnb is I would say, a nice environment to work in. I think one of the things I value most about working here is the people that I work with. Having been in the US for 8 years and spent 5.5 of them at this company, some of my closest relationships are people that I've actually worked with over the last couple of years. The space itself is really nice. I feel like it's one of the few companies I can work for where the values of the company really align very closely with my personal values. I think if you work for a hotel conglomerate or some other massive corporation, often the money is going back into a huge corporation. Airbnb is one of the few companies that actually gives back to everyday people within the country, and I think that's something that I actually really value personally.
So what are some of your responsibilities at Airbnb?
Since working at Airbnb, when I originally started, I worked on the revenue and operations team. At the time, there were probably about 700 employees globally. It's now more than 5,000, so it was a lot smaller back then. But the team I worked on was a team of 4, and I was responsible for the global revenue accounting and operations for Airbnb. Throughout that time, I think one of my primary responsibilities was growing the team, and I served in that role for about 4.5 years before moving into the role that I'm in now. I managed to grow the team from around about 4 or 5 people to probably more than 20 across locations in both the US and EMEA. Beginning of this year, actually, I took this role that I'm in today. One of the main reasons was that I actually really value learning new experiences. And in this role, I get to spend a lot of time doing diligence and integrating the different businesses that Airbnb acquires. I think we've acquired about 4 companies in the last 12 months, which means that I get a lot of exposure to different markets, different industries, but also different management styles.
That's super interesting. So what are some of the companies that Airbnb has acquired?
So Airbnb acquired in December last year a company called Guest. It's a sort of corporate event spaces company based in Denmark. A smaller company, but it's a space that Airbnb is interested in. After that, we did a few more this year. One of them is called Lucky. It's a French company that works in host management services, essentially providing additional tools that hosts can use when they sort of want to become a host on our platform. Some of the more recent ones we did was a company called Hotel Tonight. Hotel Tonight is similar to Airbnb, except its primary focus is on more immediate term bookings and in the hotel segment. That was probably one of our larger acquisitions we've done. And then the most recent one was a company called Urban Door, which is focused on long-term rental stays.
How do your personal values reflect in the work that you do?
My personal values, or how they're reflected in the unit that I work in, is really indicative of people in general. I really value relationships and people, and I think one of the most important things is how you develop your team. If you hire smart people and you allow them to be themselves, you open up a lot more opportunity than really micromanaging the individuals that you own. So I think that's one of the things I've enjoyed most, is just developing the careers of the people I work with, but at the same time taking in as much as I can from the people around me. I have the benefit of working in a company that I would say hires some of the smartest people in the world. If you're willing to learn, people are willing to teach, and I've really enjoyed that over the last few years.
What's the best advice you received early in your career?
I'd say some of the advice that I really appreciated early in my career is be curious. I think when I finished my degree and went into articles, you have the benefit of being exposed to some great leaders within different organizations as you audit different companies. I really took that to heart and spent as much time as I could learning from the individuals that I worked with, as well as the partners and senior managers that I worked with. I think curiosity is the thing that will help you learn the most in life, and it's something that to this day I make a point of asking as many questions as I can, trying to understand as much as I can, and doing things that I don't necessarily know how to do. I think exposing yourself to those challenges is what really helps you grow as an individual.
I'm interested to know, what are some of your career highlights?
Landmarks, I think that's kind of a difficult one. Going back, I think I wasn't always the most studious student. I struggled a bit with learning out of books. I think university was really challenging for me. My board exams are really challenging for me. So getting through those milestones were certainly some of the biggest ones early in my career. As an adult, in my professional career now, I think the thing I valued most are the people around me. I really have appreciated getting to know them. I've appreciated developing them and having them develop me as a professional. I think most of my milestones are really seeing my colleagues go through weddings, babies, relationships. Those are the things I've really valued. And then just working for a company that has grown into something that is sort of an iconic brand across the world. It's something I've really appreciated and really enjoyed.
Good day, Jared. It's Hiram Wood here. I've got 3 questions for you. Firstly, if you could do it all over again, would you study to become a CA?
If I had a choice to do a CA over again, I would definitely do it again. I think having that designation behind your name, it sets a standard of trust with any employer. It's one of the things that will certainly get you into the door for any interview, and I think after that it's really on you to sell yourself as a valuable asset to any company. Going through articles and even during university, I think studying for this and sort of being an auditor in the first couple of years adds a lot of value to you as a professional, adds a lot of experience, and it's something that I think has set a fantastic foundation for me later in my professional career.
What advice do you have for young CAs?
I think going back to being curious, the number one thing that I will always hold as most important, that challenge yourself to do things that you don't always do, or at least don't know how to do. I think learning from your mistakes in that way is probably, for me anyway, the best way that I can learn. Just make sure you learn from them. I think those would be the two most important ones.
What are the skills of the future that a CA needs?
I think a CA designation has been great in the way that it forces you to apply yourself more broadly. Going into it, you learn about different aspects of business, and I think if you want to be just an accountant and that's all you ever want to do, that's perfectly fine. But if you truly want to be a business partner, you have to be able to take those skills and apply them to different situations. I'd say that is one of the things that I would push individuals growing into their career the most, is just to think more broadly in how you can really apply your skills to every situation, not just the one that's sitting in front of you.
Are there any other South Africans working at Airbnb?
Yeah, so I actually came over with a boutique consulting firm. One of their lines is supporting the US audit industry, particularly during busy season. That's pretty much how I came over. The funny thing is, after that, I've still kept good relations with that company, and we now have some of their consultants that work for us. Some of them are from South Africa, very similar backgrounds to me. Some of them are from Australia, others are from Ireland, but we have a handful of them here, it's always really fun to see people that sort of are a couple years behind you, but are going through very similar stages in their career.
What do you do for fun?
So for fun, it depends on the time of year. I am an avid triathlete actually, so I spend a lot of time, probably about 10 months of the year, very focused on swimming, running and biking. It's a huge hobby of mine. Outside of that, I have a dog, a cat and a wife that I spend a lot of time with. I really enjoy all three of them. And I think California, being an outdoor person, California is a fantastic place if you love the outdoors. So my wife and I do a lot of hiking, do a lot of biking, and spend a lot of time on the beach as well.